we can send you the link to the video.
Okay, let's look at another question here. What are the documents required for the application? So for the application, there's not necessarily documents needed. There is a tax section or a tax and financial section that you'll need help with your parents to fill out because we ask questions about the tax return. And they can choose if they want to use their 2019 tax return or, once tax season passes and they have their 2020 tax return, they can use that. But they don't actually have to upload it. They just have to insert information in certain fields. And then aside from that, for documents required for the application, we do ask for letters of recommendation, but those are actually optional. They're not required. You don't have to upload any, but you can upload as much as 3 if you choose to.
Okay, so we have a question. Does the scholarship cover beyond undergrad? Yes, if when you have finished your undergrad, you have money left over, the funds can be used for graduate school, or we've had students use it for study courses like LSAT, MCAT, things like that, or your application fees. But definitely if you have money left over, then it can go towards whatever your costs are for graduate school. We've definitely had that with students. And I know, Amy, you had another question if the scholarship covers studying abroad. It does. We would get some information from you, especially in the time of COVID. We would want to make sure that you have a refund policy. We don't want our students signing up for something that you're going to, be out a lot of money potentially. And if you are going to be taking anything, mainly if it's a summer one, if you're studying abroad in the summer, because those are shorter length of classes. So we would want to see if you are studying something that has to do with your major. If it's in the semester, the fall semester or the spring semester, those restrictions don't apply because generally you are going to be going to study abroad something that's in your major. So your scholarship disbursements can go toward that. You're welcome.
Awesome. Okay, let's see here. Will every student that apply get a full ride to any school of their choice? I did answer this a moment ago. I just wanted to respond to that question. So it's, as you know, it's the amount of the award varies, so it wouldn't be a full ride. It would typically be a certain amount that you would have for the entire 4 years that you're in school, like the average being 12,000. Go ahead.
I'm just going to add something to that. It obviously also depends on the school that you're going to, because if you're attending a school that your tuition costs for the semester are much lower, if you're living at home and you're attending Palm Beach State or you're attending FAU and your scholarship is large enough, then when we say, full ride normally has a different meaning, but that also means that you're not going to have any costs, and that could very well be the case. It really just depends on what your tuition costs are and what your disbursement is, as Shannon was saying.
Yeah, and then a question in the chat is, should the letters of recommendation be from teachers only? It doesn't have to be. It can be from a teacher, a guidance counselor, someone in the community, like if you volunteered somewhere, worked somewhere, anyone like that you can get a reference letter from. I will say for teachers and guidance counselors, it's common that sometimes they're not able to, or they don't want to share the letter with you. And if that's the case, they don't have to give it directly to you in order for it to be attached to your application. You can actually give them our contact information and they can email it to us. And as long as they tell us who the recommendation is for, we can attach that to your application.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they can also fax it, but email's faster.
I just want to reach out for people that may have joined since we got started. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, even if it's something that we have answered, that's fine. We understand people are going to be hopping in and out, just like this was a college fair, so don't hesitate to type a message in. I would love it if students could just put in the chat what grade you are and the high school that you attend. As well as, I'll just repeat it again, if you are in a medical academy, my email address and Shannon's email address is in the chat. please reach out to one of us, because it is important that you attend the high school presentation at the school that you're going to. But we want to reach out to you. There is a different way that you would fill out the application if you're in a medical academy and you want to be considered for a health profession scholarship, which is just one of many that we offer. So I just wanted to point that out. I did want to also say that we get a lot of questions about citizenship, whether or not you have to be a United States citizen to apply for the scholarship. You do not. We have students that are DACA students who, have resident alien IDs, who are here with a lot of different conditions. The only thing that we cannot accept an application for is a student who's here illegally. If you'd have to have some type of verification of why you're here. That's not Shannon's nor I decision. So, we would accept any and all situations, but we have students every year who receive the scholarship who aren't able to do a FAFSA and who are not eligible for, the federal aid, Bright Futures. That is not a deterrent to you applying. And some of the students that we've awarded, it's meant the difference between them being able to go to college or not. So we definitely encourage you to apply.
Okay, so we have a question from Facebook. The question is, forgive me if you already answered this, but is it mainly based on family income? Does any student, regardless of income, have a chance to get the scholarship? So yes, in response to that question, yes, because there's no particular cap that we have on income. We base financial need on a case-by-case basis for every application that comes across, because we understand that you can't just look at one particular document to determine if someone actually has financial need. That's why we also say that we're not tied to FAFSA. If they're saying one thing about your ability to get financial aid, that's not going to directly impact your chances with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have our test scores required for the application. Absolutely not. They're not on the application at all. This is the first year we've taken it off. Yay! But it will not be back on. So that is not something that you have to worry about at all. And I do want to point out that it does ask for your GPA and your HPA on the application, but that is not a factor in you receiving the scholarship. So I don't want anybody concerned about that. We definitely encourage everybody to apply.
Yeah. Okay, let's see some other questions here. How many people per year are accepted for this scholarship? So that number varies per year. We always try to increase the amount of students that get the scholarship, but this past year we awarded 89 scholars. And do remember that this scholarship is specifically for students of Palm Beach County. And then aside from that, we have specific scholarships for students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas, Blanche Lee High School, and Pompano Beach High School. But for those of you in Palm Beach County, you're not competing against anyone else other than your county. This isn't a national scholarship.
Okay, we have, does the scholarship weigh the student's ability to pay or the student's application more? Well, I'll very briefly go into that question, because that's, I mean, these are all important questions, but to put people's minds at ease, the first process that you go through is your application is reviewed by, we have about 70 people in the community who are going to read your applications and score them 5 times. And then your lowest score is going to be dropped. And then applications are literally ranked from highest score to lowest score. And there's a cutoff of how many people that we can interview. We do our main interviewing over a 2-day period, and then we interview for restricted scholarships, which we go into in the presentation all throughout April. So that's one process, and that's why it's so important that you find out the best way to do this application, because you can't make it to the next stage, which is an interview, without your application being rock solid. And that doesn't mean that you are involved in everything and that you have a 4.0. That's not what I mean by rock solid. What I mean is what we go over in the presentation, that you have done your best effort. Pretend that this is an application to your dream school, because in a way it is. I mean, if you receive the scholarship, the funds can help you go to your dream school. So, but that's one process. After the application, if you receive an interview, that's a whole nother process. And you have to provide to us documents that show what your financial need is, meaning your financial aid award letters to the schools that you are considering. And so at that point, you have an interview, but then we have these financial aid award letters, and then we see what your need is. If you are already receiving a full ride from your school, we're not going to offer you a scholarship. So it's not, it's your ability to pay is part of that, because your school is going to look at your parents' ability to pay when they're awarding you, your financial aid package. And that comes into our consideration after the interviews, because that's when Shannon and I will go through very detailed need analysis. And we will look at, it's not so much your ability to pay as it is what is your actual financial need for the school that you're choosing to go to. Mm-hmm. So I know that was a long answer, but it's a really important question, because I know people don't really understand, well, how do I get from point A to point Z to get the scholarship? We have a very detailed process that we go through. Anybody that's just joining us, we just want to go ahead and repeat, put any questions that you have in the chat. Those that are still on might hear the questions answered more than once, but we definitely want to be able to answer any questions that you guys have throughout the night.
I'm having a lot of repetitive questions on this list. Leslie, do you have a recommendation of any questions?
If you're seeing questions on Facebook that we've already answered, I would go ahead and answer them again, because people are just joining.
Okay.
So, you may, like I said, you guys may be hearing some of these questions answered more than once, but that's just kind of how it's going to be, because people are popping in and out. So yeah. I can't see the Facebook. So if you're seeing questions on there, go ahead and ask them.
Okay. Yeah. We haven't gotten any more since then,
okay.
But for anyone who might have joined recently from Facebook Live, you can type your questions in the comment section, and I'm checking that regularly too. So we'll respond to that as we see them come in. We have two questions in the Zoom chat. The first is, what do you consider financial need? So we did answer this a little bit ago. Basically, financial need is determined on a case-by-case basis for each applicant. We don't just look at one particular document, like we don't just look at income. We don't just look at what FAFSA is telling you. We're not tied to what FAFSA is telling you about your financial aid or your EFC that you're getting when you fill out the FAFSA. So there's no cap on, family income or anything of that nature. We believe in looking at the full picture of the student, because that's how you're really going to be able to determine financial need.
And I will just point out, if there's anybody who is concerned that even though we don't have a stated limit that your parents can't make beyond, there are numbers, that if your parents' income, if anybody's won the lottery recently, or, I mean, obviously there are going to be income limits that our board is not going to feel as financial need. It's not that there's some stated number, but if that's something you're concerned about and you want to double check with us before you start your application, obviously we're not seeing your application, so we never really discourage anybody, because we don't know what the whole picture is, but it is something that we can talk about with you privately at a later time.
And then the other question here is, are there any essays or supplements to answer? So that's a good question, because yes, for our application, there are 2 required essays. The first is about goals or your career and educational goals. So you just want to talk about what your plans are for your major, colleges that you are applying to and hope to attend, and in the long run, what you plan to do for your career. And then the second essay is your personal characteristics. So that would be, a special attribute about yourself, any challenges you've overcome, any achievements that you feel like the selection committee should know about you. And for both essays, there's a word requirement of 400 words or more. And we just do that to make sure that you guys are, writing a little bit more than just one paragraph. And then, if you've written something like this before for other scholarships or other college applications, you can actually reuse those essays. You just want to make sure that it does respond to our prompt, that it does go along with what we're asking.
We have a great question. What type of applicants have done well in the past? Specific characteristics? I would say that, and I will give some characteristics, but I would say that every year our new class of students is diverse in just about every way that you can be diverse in. The talents that they might have had in high school, maybe they held leadership positions, they showed a sense of community, or involvement in something, or a passion for something, or maybe they were caring for somebody and they couldn't do that. I mean, everybody has had their own set of circumstances. I will tell you what helps you out in the application is that if you are showing to the people who are scoring your application that you are a good investment. One of the best ways, you could list numerous school activities and numerous community involvement. But if you're filling out the application in a really sloppy way, misspelled words, improper capitalization, or if your essay is just, the same kind of thing, very sloppy, having all of those things is not really, maybe you would have gotten points for that, but you're going to lose a lot of points. So you really want to show them that you're very serious about this, that you do plan on attending school. I do know that we had, kind of related to this, we had some questions where students were saying, can I reserve this scholarship now and then use it later? And I'm not trying to go off topic from the question that you have. It's just kind of part of it. We have students every year who get the scholarship and don't need it right away because they are either receiving a lot of aid and they're going into they're in a 2-year program and they're going to transfer out, and so in their junior year they'll have a bigger need, or maybe they don't need money their freshman year because they got a lot of one-time freshman scholarships. That's fine if we know they're going to need the money at some point, but you have to be starting school in the fall or spring. So we can't have a student who says, well, I'm not going to be going to school for a couple years, but can I get it and then use it in a couple years? And the answer would be no, you absolutely have to be enrolled in a program because we don't have any control over it if you're not. And Shannon may have something else that she wants to add about specific characteristics. It's really students who demonstrate a passion for whether it's what they want to study or something that they've been doing at school or something that's been in their life that has been what has driven them. They do not have to have a 4.0. That's just one attribute of a student. But they are all instructed that they have to look at the application as a whole before they ever even start. So they're not going to start scoring you on one part that you're filling out without reading all about you, because they're trying to get the best picture of who you are as a human and as a student. And with what's going on in the world today, I think that you guys need to take advantage of this. And if there's anything that you guys have been doing, they all know that your life has changed since March, that maybe you guys were involved in a lot of things and that came to a screeching halt. What have you been doing with your time? You definitely want to think outside the box in this application and show them who you are. Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Shannon.
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean, just in general, people who show that they put care into their application just by, making sure that the grammar looked good and that they didn't fill it out sloppily or didn't have incomplete sentences like that, that actually goes a long way. But then aside from that, we have students who have gotten the scholarship because they had a leadership role or maybe they did something in their community. But then we have other students who, you know, maybe they didn't have the best of grades, but they didn't have the best of grades because they were taking care of someone or because they were working to help provide for their family. You know, everyone is different. And so you want to make sure in your personal characteristics essay that you're telling that story. You know, the first part of the application, they're going to see what you're doing in school, you know, where you plan to go to college, what you want to major in, and what you've done for activities while you were in high school. But then when it comes time for that personal characteristics essay, that's your chance to show them another side of you that you feel like they need to know, that you feel like will help your chances. A few things, because I know we have questions here in the chat, but I just want to answer this one question for Ruth on Facebook. The answer to your question about when the application opens, it opens November 1st for everyone. So you can find that on our website, scholarship.org. If you go to our website right now, you might see an apply button that doesn't go anywhere, but as soon as November 1st hits, it'll be available for you to click and access the application. And then it closes February 1st at 5 p.m.
Anybody new joining in, write your questions in chat. There is no silly questions. So, you know, if it's, we have a lot of them that are the most common questions, but I don't want to just say those out loud if everybody has already been in here and heard them. So please write it in chat so we can go ahead and make sure we answer your question.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question here. Do you recommend we maintain confidentiality with any letters of recommendation, whether it be from a teacher or another adult? I'm wondering if what you mean by that question is whether they give the letter directly to you. So if that's not what you're asking for, I just need you to elaborate. But just so you know, if you ask for a letter of recommendation from a teacher or someone in the community, they don't have to give it directly to you. They can email it to us or fax us. Let's see.
But there was another part to that same question.
Oh,
are we required to upload an official resume? Absolutely not. The only uploads that you will be doing in the application are the optional letters of recommendation. That's the only thing we ask for. We don't want to see a resume, a transcript, anything to do with FAFSA. That's not part of this application.
Is it an advantage to get the application in earlier rather than later? So actually, no, because the selection committee cannot see when you submit the application. You have months to work on this application. You can save and come back later, so you don't have to do it all in one sitting. And that's great for you, but also that doesn't mean that you should procrastinate. You know, specifically with the financial section of the application, you're going to have to ask your parents for help with answering some of those questions. And you don't want to wait until the last day to ask for that kind of help. So that's just one reason not to procrastinate. But other than that, I mean, you can take the entire time to work on the application as it goes and not worry about getting brownie points and rush to submit it for that purpose. Okay, let's see what else we got.
I think that there was a clarification about the letters of recommendation. I'm pretty sure Shannon asked what you were asking, but it doesn't make a difference in terms of your score if they're sent to you and you upload it, or if they're sent to us and we upload it, because we don't upload it. If somebody sends something to us, we're not going to put it into your application until February 2nd, because there's a reason they didn't send it to you. They didn't want you to see it. Not because it says anything bad, we don't ever get those, but for whatever reason, if they don't want you to have access to it, then we won't put it up in your application as long as you have access to your application. But they get uploaded on February 2nd, and nobody in the selection committee, and I see that's a question also, the selection committee will start reviewing the applications a week after it closes. They do not know when anybody submitted. That's not information that they get. They have no idea who uploaded the letter of recommendation. They are told that if for some reason you ask a guidance counselor to write a letter of recommendation, and let's say instead of saying they recommend you for the George Snow Scholarship Fund, it says they recommend you for, and they list a college. And that happens because, you know, they're having to write a lot of these. That's not taken against you at all. Like, that's not something anybody would ever hold against you. They, you know, they understand what the situation is with guidance counselors. So, so there's that.
I think on that note, this would be a great time to bring up how the selection committee works. So as Leslie just said, once the application closes, the selection committee reads or gets the applications to read and review a week after. And basically we have volunteers in our community who come and review the applications for us. And they get about a month to a month and a half, I believe, to review the applications. And it's, every application is read and scored 5 times. And then that 5th lowest score will be dropped. So your score will be based off of your 4 best. And then that's how we determine who will be eligible for an interview. And interviews take place typically in early April. If we're able to have them in person, then we would have them the first week of April. And
that was me.
What was that?
I was just putting something in. I saw you were looking at the chat. I was just letting everybody know to put in their grade and the high school they attend.
Was there anything that you would like to add about what I just said?
No, I mean, I think that, you know, it's a very detailed process. As I've said, if somebody has come on and didn't hear that, we have a lot of safeguards and in place, and to make sure that everybody is being dealt with very fairly. And it's a really thorough process. I mean, you know, no decision is made quickly, and a lot goes into it. You know, so you definitely want to do your best because you want them to be, you know, to understand when they open up your application that you are somebody who is really taking your time in filling out this application. I do know that we have some questions that we've received about the schools that this applies to. So if somebody's new, they may not have heard this earlier, but these are 4-year college scholarships. If you are attending a technical school, that's absolutely fine. If you are just going to a 2-year program and you're going to be done, that's absolutely fine. They can be used for any accredited school, in-state, out-of-state, public, private, that's absolutely fine. Again, whenever I say that, I always have to qualify. If you are in a medical academy, one of the scholarships that we offer is a Quantum Foundation Health Profession Scholarship. There are limitations on the schools that you can attend. I definitely go into that if you are attending a school that has a medical academy, so you should be at the presentation because there is a difference in how you fill out the application if you want to be considered for that. So it's always a little disclaimer because for our main scholarship, we don't care where you're going to school. And we also, if let's say you start at one school and for some reason that ends up not being the best fit for you, can you transfer? Absolutely. The scholarship belongs to you. The scholarship does not belong to the college. So that is not an issue with us at all.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. And then do you think we should discuss restricted scholarships at all?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, as you guys already know, with our scholarship, you're not required to attend any specific school or major in any specific subject, but we have additional scholarships that when you're filling out our application, you'll be asked some yes or no questions to gauge if you could qualify for those specific scholarships. And those are called restricted scholarships, where the donor wanted to help a student from a specific background or a student pursuing a specific major. So an example of that would be, you know, we have a scholarship for students who want to be commercial pilots or want to work in aviation. We have one for caregivers where this is to help students who have cared for someone elderly, ill, or disabled. We have a whole wide variety of them. And so on the application, you can answer yes or no to those questions to help us gauge if you might also qualify for those restricted scholarships in addition to the unrestricted. And then we always say, you know, if you don't know how to answer a question there, if you're thinking, I'm really a maybe on this answer right now, go ahead and answer yes. And then if you change your mind, let us know. You know, we won't hold you to anything. And then as well, for those of you who fill out the application and you see that you're answering no to all those questions, don't be discouraged because you still have that unrestricted scholarship or multiple unrestricted scholarships that you're being considered for. So, So even if you don't qualify for any of the restricteds, you can still get one of our unrestricted scholarships.
Yep. And that's really important because a lot of times a student may not have the greatest application in terms of maybe they were just not involved in school, or they didn't do a lot of community service. You know, maybe they think they have no chance of getting the scholarship. You know, I'm going to be competing with, you know, all of these students who have, you know, perfect GPAs. And the thing is that these restricted scholarships may be exactly, you know, what fits for you. I mean, you may not even realize it, and you won't know what they are until, you know, the application opens and you can see it. Like in our presentation, we just show you a sample of them so that you see that that is the second part of our application. But we don't show you all the questions. That's something you'll see when you open up the application yourself. But there may be things that you don't even think about. I mean, there are such an odd variety of questions in there, like, did you go to this middle school or this elementary, or do your parents work here, or are you first gen, or, you know, there's a lot of things in there that something may apply for, you know, to you, and that ends up being how you get the scholarship, because it's a much smaller pool of students who, you know, we are looking for that scholarship, but we have to find students for that, you know, for those donors. So you should never just assume that you aren't, you know, you have no chance, because you really don't know. You know, you assume who you're competing against, but you really don't know. So
Yeah.
apply.
We got a really good question here. It says, I know earlier you said if we receive a full ride scholarship, that this scholarship wouldn't be the right fit for us. But if we have Bright Futures, does it impact our chances of getting a scholarship? So yeah. So first, just for any of you that are hearing that and are kind of confused, what we were saying earlier is that, you know, when we look at the full picture of the student to determine financial need, but of course, you know, if you're someone who's getting a full ride, then there really isn't much of a need for us. And what that means is where everything's being covered, you know, tuition, room and board, all of those fees are being covered. So a Bright Futures, like an academic scholarship through Bright Futures, is not a full ride, because they're just covering 100% of your tuition, but there's still a need for housing and books and other costs and meal plans. So we can always come in and help you cover those costs if academic Bright Futures is covering the tuition.
And just to add to that, there are definitely, I'm sure, students listening who their parents have paid Florida prepaid, and then they receive Bright Futures. Now, maybe you don't have academics, so you don't have 100%. Again, that goes to that whole packet, that whole topic of what your financial need is. If you have Bright Futures and you have academic, it depends on the school that you're going to, first of all, because it's one thing if you're going to a public school in Florida versus a private school in Florida versus an out-of-state school where your Bright Futures and your prepaid are going to be a lot less meaningless. But even if you are going to a public school in Florida, it depends on what your costs are. You know, are you going to be living off campus at some point, because housing is expensive? So, you know, your Florida prepay, if you have a plan that's going to cover your tuition, that covers your tuition, but now you have Bright Futures, and that's going to come in and cover something else towards your bill. But it also goes towards, and a lot of these things you guys haven't been exposed to because it's early in your process, but every college has a cost of attendance. And then from that cost of attendance, which is inflated because they throw everything in there. They throw insurance, and maybe you don't need insurance. They throw transportation, and that's not a cost that you're going to be billed for. There's a lot of padded expenses in there. They'll put books in there, but you're never billed for books. So that's not really your true cost of attendance. Your true cost of attendance is what you're billed for. But also, if you're living off campus, that's not going to be in your bill, but you have, you know, this cost for housing. So that's the point that we then take after your interview, depending on where you fall with your interview, because everything starts all over again. You get scored in your interview and ranked. And so it doesn't matter at that point how well you did in your application score, you're now starting all over again. But then Shannon and I will go through and see, okay, you're being awarded, you're going to have this much money coming in every year. What is your remaining cost? I definitely don't tell people not to apply for the scholarship because they have that, because you just don't know what your costs are going to be. And you certainly don't know at this point, it's so early in the game, you don't know what a school is going to be awarding you. And that's key. And the last thing I'm going to say about this point, because I know I'm going on, but it's important, is that right now it's so early in the process for you guys. I mean, you're applying to schools, but it's going to be a while until you hear from school, and then even longer until you get this financial aid award letter from the schools. You're going to get that March, April. So it won't be until then for most students that you find out exactly what your bill's going to be, like, meaning what am I going to be on the hook for? The thing is that if you're waiting until that comes around, or you think it's going to be one thing, and then that ends up being an unpleasant surprise, but you didn't apply to our scholarship or any of the other scholarships that are available, and there is a lot of scholarship money out there. At that point, you're really in a bind because our deadline has passed, and I mean, that's it. If you didn't submit, then you can't be considered for our scholarship. But now you want to go to your dream school and you're short money, but you didn't do anything to get it. So there's a million reasons why you should apply for scholarships. This is money that if you get it, you don't pay it back. I mean, it's like getting grants from your school. I mean, you want to avoid loans at any cost. So you have nothing to lose, by applying.
Perfect. So two things I want to touch on. First, just for anyone that's new and didn't already hear this, this is just a reminder that this scholarship is specifically for high school seniors of Palm Beach County. And then aside from that, we help high schools such as Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Blanche Lee High School, and Pompano Beach High School. And there's no GPA or test score requirements. And as well, the SAT and test scores have been removed from the application this year, so you don't even have to worry about filling in that question. Now, the other thing, I thought this would be a great time for us to talk about scholar support services, just because I had a question here that said, would the scholarship offer a part-time job as well when being on campus? So in response to that question, not exactly, no, but I thought it would be great to touch on, because one of our scholar support services is the fact that when you get our scholarship, you could be considered for internship opportunities. We've been lucky enough to have grants these past 2 years that have helped us offer paid internships to a number of our Snow Scholars. But then aside from that, we've also been lucky enough to have alumni come back and offer internships to our Snow Scholars in fields that were related to their major. So that's an opportunity that you could be considered for if you had our scholarship. And then aside from that, we have a wide array of scholar support services that you get in addition to the scholarship funding. There's a whole list. I don't know that I should go over all of them. Maybe just list some of the top of them. But the first is going to be, when you get our scholarship, the first question that we ask our scholars is, would you like a brand new laptop, or would you like a college supply stipend check? And the laptop is typically PC, but you'll get to see the specs in advance, so you can decide if you actually want to go with that option. If you don't, you can choose the college supply stipend check, which is generally around $300, and it's written in your name, so you can use it towards anything you need to get ready for that transition into college. And then during the summer that you start your freshman year, you have access to free college makeovers. We partner with Back Bay Hair Salon in East Boca, and it's for guys and girls. You can get anything you'd like done to your hair just to start off your freshman year feeling fresh. And then the other thing that we offer in the summer before your freshman year are college physicals and vaccinations. We partner with Boca Regional Hospital to provide those to you. And the reason why we do that is because, oftentimes when you go away to college, you will need to have a physical documented, and as well, you'll need to have your meningitis shots for living on campus. So we offer that completely for free for you in the summer before you start. And then we have other programs that you'll have access to throughout your entire time in college. Like for instance, we have an emergency fund. And the emergency fund is money that is separate from your scholarship. It's for non-educational expenses. Like if you need to get your wisdom teeth removed and you don't have insurance, we can help you pay for those costs or some of those costs. If you need emergency transportation home, we can help you with some of those costs as well. You just have to apply for it. I'm going to see if we have some questions in here. No, but, oh wait, actually. That was the same question from earlier about when the application opens up, which is November 1st, this Sunday. And it closes February 1st at 5 p.m. And then someone else wrote that they love Back Bay Hair Salon. And I think we can all agree. They do really great work. And it really is true that any guy can come in as well. And they do amazing work on everyone's hair. Let's see, do you think there's any other support services that would be important to list?
I think this year we added a new program this year that's available to our freshmen, and then those that we thought could use the program. And I think with COVID going on, that program's more important than ever, but it's with ComPsych. It's a really cool resource for students, completely free, but you and your family members, no limit on your family members, which I think is just the coolest thing. 5 free counseling sessions per issue per year. So if you get to school next year, assuming that you can go in person, I'm going to be thinking positive here. Let's say you start feeling anxious because you're homesick. You would have the availability of having, and they could be in person or video or on the phone, whatever. They would find somebody near you. So you would have 5 free sessions for that. But then let's say a little bit later, maybe something happens and, you know, exams are coming around. That's a whole nother issue. So you have 5, free sessions for that. Plus you have legal help for free legal counseling. You can call in and they will help you to speak to a lawyer about an issue. If you have to hire a lawyer, that's a different situation, but it's free legal counseling, free financial counseling, a free resource. So let's say you're going to UF and you want to know where there are apartments that have 2 bedrooms or whatever. You can submit this request. They will do the research for you. 24 hours later, they give you a list. All of this is free. And I think it's just a great support for students. But I will say that one of the things, aside from all of these scholar support services that we're known for, is that we tell students that when they become a Snow Scholar, they become part of our family. And that's evident in every single thing that we do. Shannon and I are available to our students at all times. Within reason. But during application process, we're definitely, available because we want students to ask us if they have questions. We don't want you to have to wait until the next day and then reach out during working hours, but then, you've got class going on. So, but we're here for you no matter what. Our greatest days are when students come in the office. Obviously now that's limited with COVID, but we love seeing our students. We have over 400 kids in school, and we can tell you where each of them are going and what they're doing. And we are very much a family support service. So you will always have this family. And then you also have the community behind you, because we have huge community support. These donors and people that come to our fundraising events, they're doing it because they want to help you achieve your dream. And that's a really cool thing, because going to school is a real transition. Even if you're living at home, and even for the freshman class this year, and all of our students who couldn't go back to their campuses and have to stay home, that's a whole nother transition that has a whole nother set of problems. So it's really nice knowing that you have another group of people who just want to root for you and help you out in any way that we can. So I really wish we could be meeting you guys. I hate that this is being done virtually. Like, this is so much fun when we can go to the college fair and actually meet people in person and do these presentations in person. I know Shannon and I both, like, we look forward to this time of year so much because we want to go to the schools and meet you guys. And then hopefully, you know, you get an interview, and that's like the biggest deal of all for us because, you know, we've read your applications and then we get to meet you, and we're really excited. But that was a long answer.
Oh no, it was a great answer. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the college fair is so much nicer because it feels like, you know, the night just like blows by because you just constantly meet people and it's so nice. And the same thing with visiting the high schools, but you know, this is nice too.
It is better than nothing. At least we're having the opportunity to answer your questions, because I know that there are students who are listening tonight whose schools have not scheduled with us yet. We have contacted every school in Palm Beach County that we normally go to, and we're willing to, you know, if it's a different school, if the school will let us, you know, do a presentation, we're happy to do it. But at least, you know, we have this option, you know, that if you reach out to Shannon or I, we will definitely email you tomorrow. You know, if we're not coming to your school, we'll email you the video. And if you want, you can go to our website, and we've put the website in the chat. It's scholarship.org, but that has a high school presentation schedule, and you can see when we are doing the virtual presentation with your school. Definitely important to attend the presentation, because we go through, if you haven't been on and haven't heard this, we go through the do's and don'ts of doing the application properly. Application is crucial. Nobody gets the scholarship unless they make it to the second phase, which is interviews. If you don't get an interview, you are not getting a scholarship. And it all starts with the application. So that's why we do this tonight. We're not showing you the application. It's not possible in this, you know, asking all these questions and then going through the application as well, because that takes a little, you know, a good amount of time. So it's really crucial to go to that presentation, or like I said, if we're not going to your school, reach out and ask for us to send you the link to the YouTube video, because little silly mistakes can really make a difference. You know, you start out with a perfect score. You want to remain as close to perfect, if not perfect, throughout. You do not want to give any reason for the people, the selection committee who are scoring your applications, any reason to ding your score. And, you know, it would be really frustrating if it was over little things, you know, just being sloppy in the application. So that's why, if you have not been part of this earlier when we talked about it, but throughout the application, you have got to make sure that you're taking your time and you're filling it out properly. You know, like when students are writing essays, one of the most common things that I see is people, when you're writing the word I want to be, they do a lowercase I, because a lot of times you guys write like you text. No judgment, just saying like that's what you're comfortable doing, but it does not translate well in an essay, and it's not going to help you. You know, they're not expecting you to be the best writer in the world. But if you can't get your point across, you know, one whole paragraph is one long sentence, or it's just misspellings throughout, or that kind of thing. It's going to hurt your score. And again, when I'm saying you want to start at a perfect score and stay as close as you can to that, this is a competitive process. You don't want to give them reasons to start taking off points off of your application. You know, you don't want to be where you miss the cutoff, you know, by a really small amount, but you missed the cutoff. So there's nothing that, you know, so you just want to be careful.
Yeah. I wanted to just cover two things. First, you know, we keep talking about the selection committee, and this isn't clear to you all, but I do want to make it clear that the selection committee does not see the financial section of the application. That's completely confidential. They only see the first two sections where you have your two essays and you talk about your plans for college and your personal characteristics. They don't see anything financial about you. That's only for Leslie and I to see, and it's completely confidential again. And then in response to this question here, so it says, I'm not sure if you mentioned this earlier, but the scores wipe clean for interviews and applicants are reviewed again, correct? So basically, when your application is reviewed by the selection committee, it's reviewed 5 times. and then the lowest score of the 5 is dropped. And your average score is based off of your 4 best, which determines if you're eligible for an interview. And then once you go for your interview, yes, it is wiped clean technically, because then after interviews take place, the selection committee will rank students based off of, how successful the interview was.
Yes.
So yeah, technically the ranking does change once you come for your interview.
You start all over again. Everybody is ranked. There are 5 different interview teams that are going on. 3 people will interview you. That will be the case whether they're in person like they have always been, except for this past year, or if we have to do virtual interviews again. And but you will be ranked, and then your application score has nothing to do with it. I mean, the people who are interviewing you may have read your application in the first round. They will absolutely be reading your application for the interview, but they may have read it or may not have read it. I mean, it's a very random, process in that way. But you do start all over. And we are happy if you do get an interview and you have questions about how you should prepare. Shannon and I are more than happy to help you out. We want you all to get it.
Yeah. And this is the year to definitely work as hard as you can on this application and other scholarship applications, because a common mistake that students make and in their senior year is they don't realize how much money they need for college until they get accepted into college and they see how much their university is offering them versus how much they're going to owe their university. And that doesn't come until usually spring. But our application closes before spring. So don't wait to find out how much you're going to owe the college that you are going to attend. Just jump on things now and apply for us and apply for other scholarships, because you're going to be helping yourself out in the long run. It is going to be work, but it's going to be worth it.
And Shannon and I were just saying today that, sometimes students will, last year we awarded 89. That's not a small amount of scholarships. You're not doing all this work and competing and only a couple of students are going to get it. But we were saying, for somebody who would feel like, well, why should I apply? It's all in Palm Beach County. It's going to be really competitive. But then what we would say to you is, if you are thinking, how did I fill out the application for the colleges that I want to go to? Did I fill out the applications in a rush? Did I not look over it and preview it before I submitted it and make sure that I answered the questions correctly? I was following instructions, I answered them correctly, and I did the best job in this college application, because that these colleges are looking at 40,000 people depending on the school. So that's so unbelievably competitive, and yet you have to make your application stand out there. But it's the same kind of mentality that we want you to have here. Obviously, we do not get 40,000 applications.
No.
But if you are doing your best in the application, that's going to help you a long way.
Yeah.
And a question that I wanted to answer that we haven't really gone into, that we've been asked, is how does the scholarship work at school? I think we kind of touched on that, but we had a question, how do the scholarship funds work towards college? So you don't ever receive the money. The only time you will ever get a check directly to you, as Shannon said earlier, is if you choose the college supply stipend option instead of a computer. Only time we're ever going to write a check to you. Any other time, the check is going to go directly to your school, or if you're living in an off-campus apartment and you need your disbursement to go towards rent, then we write it to the management company or your leasing agent. You can't sublease from another student, because I'm not going to write a check to another student for the same reason I'm not going to write a check to you. If we buy books for you, we order the books. You just send us a list of what books you need, and we'll ask you a few questions about that. And then we take care of that and have the books sent directly to you. But the scholarship works how you best need it to. You know, like I said earlier, I don't know if you know, this is a repeat for some of you or new for some of you, but you split up your scholarship award into the typical four-year college student is going to have 8 disbursements, fall and spring, for 4 years. But we are very flexible. If somebody says to us, I don't need money this fall, maybe you need it in the summer, when maybe you're not getting the same kind of financial aid, or maybe you need it for another expense that's not the typical, you know, tuition and, you know, housing, meal plan kind of thing. I mean, this year we had more students who weren't taking their money, out of all of our students, just because of COVID. You know, there's a lot more students who are staying at home, so their costs have gone down dramatically. They don't have, I mean, they don't have a housing contract that they're, you know, they don't have a dorm, they don't have a meal plan. There's not that transportation of getting to a school, but it's a temporary situation. And when they go back to school, then this money has not disappeared. The money stays there. And then it's available to them, you know, when they need it. So I just wanted to make sure y'all understood how the process works of the money.
Yep. And you can use scholarship funds in the summer as well. If you're taking a summer semester, you can use that money then. Of course, the scholarship amount that you get each semester is based off of fall and spring semesters. So if you do take something in the summer, you know, it's going to take away from one of those fall or spring semesters. You might be short a little bit of money, but also, you know, if you're in a situation like Leslie just said, where there's a semester that you don't need our money, then you can just save it up and use it for a summer semester or something of that nature.
We have a question about what do students need to do to maintain the scholarship throughout 4 years. We do not have a GPA requirement that you must maintain. We definitely see how you have to self-report and report your grades, and you have to upload an unofficial transcript each semester, except for your first semester. Obviously, when you're doing your paperwork for us, you don't have a transcript, so that's not an issue for you guys. But we see how you're doing, and if we notice that there is a drastic change or downward trend that's continuing, we're definitely going to reach out. It's not to penalize you or to take away your scholarship. We may suggest that you use some scholarship money to get a tutor, and we know programs offer, you know, most colleges, which I know is more difficult now because if you're not on campus, but I'm sure it's being done virtually for tutoring. And we would definitely find resources for you to help you. We're not here to take away your money.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to clarify that. So we don't encourage people to not be concerned about their GPA, yeah. But we're not here to try to take your money away from you also.
Yeah, I think one way of describing it is every semester you check in with us, and that's a way for Leslie and I to see, you know, how are you doing financially, how are you doing academically, and how are you doing emotionally or mentally. And so it's never, you know, you don't have to meet any sort of requirement when you check in with us and you upload those grades or you upload your class schedule, but it's just to see if there's a way that we can help you. You know, if it's not an academic thing, if it's a financial thing, or if it's a mental thing, we'll try our best to connect you with resources that can help you in the moment. Yeah.
We'll give you a little bit of information on the timeline just so that you have this information, because we have a question of when will final recipients be notified about receiving the scholarship. You will get an email on March 24th notifying you if you are receiving an interview. We may have some notifications that go out a little bit later than that, but that is going to be for the majority of students who are receiving an interview will get an email notification on that day. It's very detailed. We tell students in this presentation that it's really key that when you fill out our application that you put an email address that you use and check regularly. It doesn't help you if you put something that you're never checking, because Shannon and I are not going to start texting students and call students We expect you to be responsible and check your emails. So if you're not, you might not get notification that you got an interview or some other important reminder. And I also will point out that if you're using a Palm Beach School email address, we'd prefer, if you have any other email address in the application, to go ahead and put that in, because we have issues with our server where you're doing your application. There are issues with you receiving notifications a lot of the time if that's your email address. So, and that's where we're going to be sending you emails from it. So if at all possible, use a different email address. So you're going to get a very detailed email on the 24th. It's going to tell you how you sign up for a time. Again, this is your responsibility. We're not going to beg you to sign up for an interview. It's going to tell you the documents that you're going to have to provide to us. Again, I don't know if we're going to be doing in person or virtual, so obviously that's going to change those instructions. Following that, it depends if we're doing in-person interviews. If we are, our main ones are April 5th and 6th. And then we interview throughout April for restricted scholarships. That's if they're in person. If they're virtual, and I'm looking up at the chart, they are May 3rd and 4th. And the award letters will be sent on May 7th. We definitely do not let you know if you've received a scholarship until after the May 1 college deadline. There's a reason for that. You're going to present to us the documents that show, for this school, this is what my cost is, and this is how much aid I'm getting. So we know after May 1st that you are definitely going to this school, so we know exactly what your need is and how much money that you can take or need from us. If we did it before May 1st and we're operating under the principle that you're going to this school and this is how much you need, and then you change schools, it could be a school that you're getting, 90% of your aid covered, or, a full ride, and that changes things drastically for us. So now we wait until after May 1st. So you will get, if you are receiving the scholarship, you are going to get an even more detailed email on May 7th. And we won't go into like what's going to be in the package, but the point is you definitely want to be checking your emails, and that gives you like the timeline. So, this is not something that moves quickly. It's something that we take our time with, giving the students the chance to do the application, and then we take our time in the selection process to make sure everything's being done fairly.
Yeah. And we really do mean it when we say that you can reach out to Leslie or myself for questions. Those contact information was posted in the chat for both Zoom and Facebook. So if you have questions throughout the application process, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. We're happy to help. And, one of the sections on the application is about tax returns. That's going to be your parents' tax returns. They can use the 2019 or the 2020 when they get it. But sometimes your parents will give you their tax return and just ask you to fill out the questions on your own. And you may not know how to answer some of those questions. And that's okay, because you can actually ask Leslie and I. You can contact us and say, this is the exact form that they gave me, I forgot the name of the form, like the 1040. Yeah, like you tell us the name of the form, and we have a sample form that we'll look at to help you locate the answer to some of the questions we're asking. I think, do we have a question in here? No, just
all the financial information is based on your parents or parent. If you have a single parent, it is not based on any income you're earning. We do not care. We care if you've had a job and you want to put it in the application, that's wonderful. But we don't care about your income. You're not reporting any income to us that you have made, because we're never looking to you to be accountable for the costs. And maybe you have no income to report for your parents. We have students with all different kinds of situations. So maybe a lot of these questions are going to be zero. Maybe your parents don't file a tax return. If you have any unusual financial situation, I definitely suggest that you reach out to Shannon or myself when you get to that point, because there may be a different way that you need to fill it out. Again, it's not for the purpose of your application being scored, because nobody who is scoring your application is going to get that information, but we need to have accurate financial information. So we want to make sure that you're filling it out, correctly for us. I do just want to say, you guys feel free to, if your questions have been answered and you don't have any additional questions, don't, this is going on till 8 o'clock, just so that we have this open forum for students to come on and get their questions answered. We don't expect you to have to stay on for the full 2 hours. I know you don't really want to hear the same questions being answered. I don't know at this point if everybody that's in here has already been on for the whole duration, so I definitely don't want to repeat information that you guys have already heard. And I'm trying to look, and I know Shannon can do the same thing, at some of the questions that we've already been sent.
Yeah. Yeah, there was an interesting question that came in. It said, do you have to be a senior to receive the scholarship, even if you plan to graduate high school during your junior year? And I mean, that would be a no, right?
No, you don't have to be a senior. If you're graduating early, it's just when you're graduating. I mean, if you're fortunate enough that you are leaving, I don't mean that high school I didn't mean that way. I just meant, like, if you're good to go and ready to move on to school, it just matters that you would be going to college in the fall. So I would be saying, no, you couldn't apply if you're graduating early, but you don't have plans to attend college in the fall or spring, because, as we said earlier, you definitely have to be planning on attending school fall 2021 or spring 2022.
Yeah. And also, if you're graduating with some pre-college credits, like if you're already graduating with an AA, or maybe you have some college credits from dual enrollment or from AP, you can still qualify for the scholarship. We will ask for that on the application, just because we'll want to see what your projected graduation date is. If you're going to be graduating sooner than 4 years, that's helpful to us, because then you're not going to be someone who needs a 4-year scholarship. You would still get the same amount awarded to you, but it would just be divided into fewer disbursements or fewer payments, because you're not going to need all 8 payments, since you won't be in school for 8 semesters.
Good point. Good point.
Trying to find some other questions here to answer.
Let's see. How can applicants assess their chances of receiving the scholarship? There really isn't a way that you're going to be able to assess your chances, because you don't know what everybody else is submitting. You're not going to be privy to anybody doing the scoring. It's kind of something that's out of your control once you've submitted the application. Just like a college application is, that goes through a process, probably initially, where it's just looking for certain things. And if you meet those barometers, then you move on to the next phase, where somebody's going to read your application and read your essays and that kind of thing. For us, it's done in person, obviously, and every application is read, but I don't know of any way where you would be able to actually assess how well you're doing. And the only thing that's probably beneficial, that you guys are not in school, is that there probably is a lot of comparison, certainly when interview notifications go out. If you're in school, some of your classmates may have received an interview, or and somebody didn't. But you never know what you have no idea how your application compared to somebody else's. You don't know what's going on, what they put in their application. So, that would be way too hard to judge.
And, another thing with the essays, like we said earlier, there's 2 essays, and you can reuse those essays if you've written something like that for other scholarships or for a college application. But, one thing to help you with filling out the application and having better chances of getting the scholarship would be, to show someone you trust your application before you submit it to us, and just have them, read the essays. And I say that just for proofreading, because even here at George Snow, everyone at the office looks at one another's writing before it goes out publicly, because even people who write for a living make mistakes. So even someone who's a great writer is going to make a mistake, and it's just helpful to have an extra pair of eyes to look at that. So if there's someone you can trust, you can show them your application just before you submit it to us, and they can give you some tips on how to better fill out your, or better adjust that essay. But as well, you know, I can put this in the chat to help you. There is this resource called Story2, and it's free. It's designed specifically for seniors who are applying to colleges and applying to scholarships. And they have this resource when you sign up for Story2. It's called Story Builder. It helps you work on your application essays. And they also have videos that you can watch for free that'll give you helpful tips on writing successful essays for scholarship and college applications. So I put that in, or actually no, I thought I put
Yeah,
it
you should go ahead and put that in. That's a great idea.
There we go. I'm gonna put it on the Facebook Live
Okay.
comments as well.
So we have a great question. How many people apply each year? What is the acceptance percentage, what the acceptance percentage is, and if there's a rubric you guys follow when you evaluate the applications. So every year is different. Last year we had 815 applications that were submitted, and 89 students received the applications. So more than 10% received a scholarship. And I'm going to say right now, before I go to the rest of your question, it's kind of something that I was saying earlier. 89 scholarships is a lot of scholarships, but somebody hearing that might say, wow, like 815 students applied. And the thing is that you aren't, you are competing with 815 other applications, or last year the students did, but you don't have, there aren't 815 rock solid applications. Mm-hmm. There's a large number of those applications that, it's almost like if you could Christmas tree an application, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, there's no
minimal effort put into it. They obviously were not serious about trying to get the scholarship. So that wasn't somebody that you were really competing with. And the other thing I want to point out about that is it's what I said earlier about, using a college as an example. You're doing a college application where they are getting, tens of thousands of applications for the same number of spots that they award every year. Hugely competitive. That's the whole college process, but that doesn't keep you from applying, because obviously you want to go to the school, so you're going to do your best to get in. It's the same thing here. We do not use a rubric. The selection committee, they do have a scoring that they assess for each section of, from whatever the highest score is to the lowest, but they don't have a rubric where if you match all of these things, then there's an established rubric of, we want people to have the freedom to use their common sense also when they're scoring, and understand the bigger picture of the student's application, to get a feel for what the student's story is.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered the question. Again, if anybody's on and you feel like you've had all of your questions answered, or if you have a high school presentation that is coming up, that's been scheduled for your high school, and you can see the presentation schedule on our website, scholarship.org, definitely go to the presentation. We've covered a lot of material tonight, and you are going to hear some of the same thing in the presentation, but you have not seen the application. And obviously, if your presentation date is scheduled after November 1st, you can go on and see the application for yourself, but you still aren't going to be told, here's some things that you definitely should do that will make sure your score stays, high. And here's some things that if you do this, you're guaranteeing your score to drop very low. So it really is important that you go to the presentation. If you have questions, though, please put them in here, because we don't want to make you feel like you guys have to hang in here for no reason.
Yeah.
Not that we're not really exciting, because
yeah.
I know, terribly exciting.
Scholarships, money, college.
Well,
Yeah.
money is exciting.
That is exciting, but when you get into discussing how money works, it starts to get really boring.
Yeah, it does. No lie. There's not a way to really make this like, woo.
Yeah. But
But
once
you'll
you
feel
get
like
the
that if you get the
scholarship,
money, though.
yeah.
What?
I said once you get the scholarship, that's the fun part. Yeah.
That is the fun part. That is the fun part. That, and then you don't ever shake Shin in our eyes. So a double benefit.
Yeah. We really do enjoy getting to know the scholars, and it's one of, I mean, the good thing for you is you can go to any college of your choosing, so you can go anywhere in the country. But that's actually one of the sad parts for us is because you're all over the country, it's harder for us to see you. So we really look forward to, when students call us just to check in and let us know how they're doing, or if they come and visit. Obviously with coronavirus, we can't really have visitors at the moment, but it is nice when, a pandemic isn't on the rise and we get to see our students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If anybody who is on, if you were on in the beginning and you already heard this, then I apologize for repeating, but if you are, you could just let us know the grade and the school that you are attending, and I'm going to repeat it one more time. If you are in Medical Academy, make sure you're attending the presentation, and if you're not, or if the presentation has already passed and you didn't attend, if you did a Google form, then you should have received a package from us, an email. But get in touch with one of us so that we can talk to you about one of the scholarships that you definitely have to fill out the application a little bit differently. If you've already heard this, I apologize. I don't know who's been on since the beginning. I do know somebody asked if you're going to the U.S. Army, can you use the scholarship because you're planning on attending college while in the Army? In our experience, we kind of had, I guess, two sets of experiences. Most of the time, if somebody is going they sign up for Army or they enlist in the Army, Navy, whatever, usually there's a program that they are going to pay for your college. So you would not receive our scholarship because you're not ever going to need our money. But we have had students they're in a program where they're attending a school and they're also enlisted, but they are going when they're done with school. And so the armed forces, whoever they were enlisted with, did not pay. So in that case, then you would be eligible for the scholarship. You cannot enlist though in something and go to that now and then plan on attending college, in a couple of years. That we can't do because we can't hold your scholarship.
Let's see. When will the final recipients be notified about winning the scholarship? So the timeline, as you may have already heard, is that if we're able to have it in person, we have a timeline for in person and we have a timeline for virtual if the pandemic is still an issue at the time. So interviews will be in person first week of April, and then if we keep that timeline going, we would be sending out award notifications on, just trying to find that date here. Award May 7th. And then if we're unable to do in person, then the timeline would be pushed back for virtual. So if we were doing virtual interviews, that would be the first week of May 3rd and 4th, and notifications for the awards would be sent May 17th. And that's when you would be notified if you received a scholarship. And then usually once notifications are sent out about scholarships, you'll receive this whole long packet that you'll want to read everything because it'll not only have some important details that you'll need to read, but also it helps you learn more about some of the goodies that'll be available to you as a Snow Scholar. And we usually have an awards reception and an orientation. This past year, unfortunately, we couldn't have them in person. We had to do a virtual orientation, which was a bummer for us. And then the awards reception was a drive-by awards reception where students jumped out of their car, they took a quick picture, we cheered them on as they got their graduate duffel bag. And I also gave them these yard signs that they could put in the yard that said "Congratulations, Snow Scholar," and had their name on it. It was very quick introduction, but it was nice just to cheer them on and take a quick picture and send them on their way.
Yeah.
I think we have a question here. So I understand people in the medical academy have to fill out the application different because of the specific scholarship that deals with medical students. But does that mean you would need to be considered for, but does that mean that you would not be considered for the general scholarship at all? No. No, so when you fill out the one application, you're considered for numerous scholarships. So it's, there's just the general unrestricted scholarships where you can go to any college, major in any subject. And then, we have the restricted scholarships like the quantum scholarship for medical students. And we have other restricted scholarships in addition to that. But just because you're answering certain questions in a way to be eligible for quantum, that's not going to disqualify you for any other scholarship on that application.
The only reason that I keep making this big deal about it is because if you do qualify for the health profession scholarship, and quantum has its own set of requirements for that. If you do qualify, then there's a whole nother separate selection committee that's made up of medical professionals that will be reading and scoring your application. So your application is actually scored two separate selection committees. We have students every year who receive an interview for quantum because they have their own separate interviews, and then they also receive an interview with George Snow. Which is a great circumstance to be in. So by no means are you, by doing that, you're hurting yourself. If anything, you're giving yourself another option, because it's just like these other restricted scholarships. I mean, the competition for the health profession scholarship is obviously going to be much smaller than for the main scholarship. You don't have 815 people that are applying for quantum, because first of all, they're only students who are in the medical academy. They're only students who are going to major in a healthcare field, and then you have to attend Florida Atlantic University, the regular school, or the honors college, Palm Beach Atlantic, or Palm Beach State. You can only go to one of those three schools, and that's something I'll get into in the presentation because they have their reasons for that. But so that obviously is going to limit the amount of students who are going to qualify for that. So you're not competing with as big a number. So if you meet the criteria for quantum, then we want to make sure you know how to fill out the application to be considered for quantum, because we want you to be considered, for as many scholarships, as possible.
So I just want to go over really quickly on the application, what are you expected to fill out, just very briefly. So, there's three parts to the application. The first is about your academics or your time in high school. So you'll fill out any sort of community and volunteer activities, any school activities that you've been a part of in your high school, in your 4 years in high school. You can also list awards and honors that you've received throughout high school. You'll also put down at least or up to 3 colleges that you are considering that you've applied to, been accepted into, or been waitlisted for. We have 2 essays one is about your goals and one is about your personal characteristics, and you can reuse an essay that you've written for another college or scholarship application. You can copy and paste that into our fields for the essays, as long as they respond correctly to our prompt. And then the second section is for areas of study. That's where we're going to gauge if you may qualify for some of those additional restricted scholarships. There's a lot of yes or no questions. And then in that same section, we're going to ask about reference letters. Reference letters are optional. You don't have to upload any, but if you choose to, you can upload as many as 3. And that's where you'll find the second essay for personal characteristics. And this is a chance to show a little bit more about yourself that you would like the selection committee to know, like special characteristic, any special attribute, anything that you've ever overcome, like challenges, anything special that you've received as an accomplishment. And then when we move on to the third section, it's the tax and financial section, which is completely confidential. Only Leslie and I have access to that. The selection committee does not. And this is where you'll fill out just details about family information, taxes and financial information. And if you need help answering some of these questions, like if you don't know how to answer certain tax questions, you can ask Leslie or myself what is it that we're asking for, looking for. Trying to think if I missed anything there.
I don't think so.
Okay. But yeah, so, and then, you know, with the tax returns, you can provide the 2019 tax return or the 2020 if that is available at the time that you're filling out the application. And also, we added a question under the tax and financial section about if your family has been affected by COVID-19, because we do understand that the tax return from 2019 may not accurately reflect your current financial situation as a result of COVID. So that's your chance to just let us know a little bit more about what's going on that you don't think is clear or will come across in those other fields.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would want to answer this, but we had a question that was asking how the scholarship fund started.
Well, I'll do it very briefly because I'm sure everybody's tired and doesn't really want to hang on. But George Snow is our president's father. He used to be a teacher at Atlantic before it was even named Atlantic. And he was a big believer in helping students. He volunteered to drive students home from after school activities, even when there wasn't a bus. He petitioned so Palm Beach County would provide a bus so he could help students out. And he was a big believer in helping students that want to help themselves. That was like key for him. He went on to do other things, construction and flying a helicopter, and he was killed in a helicopter crash. They never found any wreckage. There's a whole conspiracy story there of what the family thinks may have happened. But his family wanted to start something to honor him. And a lot of people feel like he died and left a lot of money to start the scholarship fund. And this is our 38th year. So we have been around for a while, but he didn't leave anything. And they started the scholarship fund in his memory with 2 scholarships for $1,000 each. And last year we awarded over 1.4 million. So it's grown tremendously, but it's funded solely from donors who want to send students to school. And we have 2 big fundraisers every year. We just had our ballroom dancing event. It's like Dancing with the Stars, but it's really cool. We get community leaders to dance, and you win the Mirror Ball Trophy by how much money you raise. And that's one way that we raise funds. And then we have a cowboy ball that also is a big fundraiser for us. So it's a really cool story. But that's how the community is very involved in this, and that's why the community is very involved in our students, wanting to know how they're doing. And you know, a lot of our donors take a real personal interest in the students. One of our donors is the most adorable husband and wife, and one of our students did not have a good dorm situation. She goes to FAU. And so she was going and doing homework at their house. I just thought that was the cutest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have a lot of donors who are like that, very wanting the students, you know, or wanting to be involved with the students. So we don't want to keep you guys. I mean, I think at this point we would be just repeating things with you guys. I mean, I don't have any other questions that anybody has sent in to answer. If you guys put in the chat, you know, the grade and the school that you're at. I know earlier, and I don't know if anybody is still on from Inlet Grove, that hasn't been scheduled, and they're very difficult for me to get into the school. I'm not sure why. They usually will only let me come in to talk to the students who are in the medical academy or the nursing program there. Obviously, I'm not going to any schools this year, but I would definitely like to have the opportunity to talk to you if anybody is still on from Inlet Grove. Um, Definitely get in touch with Shannon or I, since there won't be a presentation there. Do you guys have any other questions that you want answered? Look, you have this intimate gathering here.
I mean, you can always email us too. We've put our
Yeah.
contact information in the chat, but
Yeah.
you know, now's your chance. Anything, I mean, even if you're afraid that it's a question we've already answered and you don't want to ask it, I mean, put it in there. I mean, we've got
Yeah,
time. So.
you can definitely send it in privately if you don't want everybody to see your question, but there is no such thing as a silly question. Usually, the question that you want to ask is something that somebody either hadn't thought of or thought of it but didn't want to ask themselves.
Yeah.
And especially in a situation like this, I think that it's really important. I will point out to you guys, I hope everybody that is listening, we probably should have said this earlier when there were more people on. If you have not submitted your FAFSA application, you definitely need to do that. It opens October 1st every year, and you're going to need to do it every year. It's not just when you're a high school senior. Hugely important for you with that document, and then you listing the schools that you want the submitted application to go to or the results to go to. That's what determines if you're eligible for any federal aid, your Pell Grant, and institutional aid. That's not merit-based, that's need-based. And for the institutional or the school aid, that's huge, because if you wait and submit your FAFSA really late in the game, like April, May, you may have qualified for money from your school, but there may not be any money left at the school, because the institutional money goes first come, first serve, not your federal money. If you qualify for federal grant money, your Pell Grant, that's not going to disappear. But the state aid can. And even if you don't qualify for any federal money, if you need to apply for a student loan, you can't do it unless you've done a FAFSA first. So that's really the gateway. And that's also what they base their financial aid package on. So in the presentation, we're going to show you an example of, you know, once you submit your FAFSA, you have a student aid report. Really important that you actually read that student aid report, because we show an example of what it means when you are in verification. You know, if you've submitted your FAFSA and you have no problem, it'll say your FAFSA has been submitted successfully. And at the top, it'll say EFC, which stands for Estimated Family Contribution, and then a number. That's what they say is your parents' estimated family contribution. And then at the bottom of it, it'll tell you if you qualify for any federal money, and if so, it'll say you can get a possible, and then it'll have an amount. If you're in verification, though, there's a problem. I mean, you could have been selected for verification randomly, or it could have been that, you know, it's all done electronically, so maybe one of your parents didn't sign, or something just isn't right. But until you fix your status, your application is in a holding pattern, which means your school is not going to award you a final financial aid package, which means for our purposes, only thinking about us in this instance, I mean, for you, the bigger picture is you don't know what the school is going to award you, but for our purpose, we also don't know what the school is going to award you. It's just a tentative award package that doesn't really help us, because, you know, your FAFSA could change things. So we definitely encourage students to get this in early, make sure you have no problems, that if you have problems that you fix it. So long before our you know, interviews come into play, that's already a done deal and already been figured out. And like I said, the bigger picture is you want to have this done so the school's going to give you a financial aid package. If they're going to give you, some schools aren't going to give you any money. I mean, some schools, your financial aid package may be just the Florida prepaid if your parents bought one, or it may just be your Bright Futures, or maybe nothing. There are plenty of students that do not have any money. You know, it'll say this is what your cost is, and your financial aid package is zero, which is even more reason that you want to make sure you're applying for scholarships as many places as possible. But it all starts with the FAFSA. So you definitely need to submit that if you haven't. And then next year, you need to make sure that, every year that you're in school, because you won't have a guidance counselor telling you, oh, tonight's FAFSA night, we're going to learn how to do this. I mean, your financial aid office will probably send out a reminder, but it's on you to make sure that you get that submitted every year. I mean, we've had students in the past that one year of school, they got a lot of money awarded to them. And then the next year, they didn't do their FAFSA until really late. And they didn't get the same award package. They lost out on a lot of money. The student was attending FSU. And it's only because at that point, FSU didn't have the money that, that they would have had he done it in a timely manner. So
Yeah.
just make sure you do that.
Did you say that we don't need it until our interviews in April, though?
Yeah, we don't, that's not part of our application. You're not uploading it. You're not putting it anywhere in the application. We don't need to know what your estimated family contribution is unless you get an interview.
Yeah. But yeah, still get started on that if you haven't already done the FAFSA.
Mm-hmm. That's our final lesson of the evening. I don't think there's anything else that we can tell you guys. And I don't want to make you stay on just to stay on. So
yeah,
unless you guys have any other questions, you guys are free to sign off.
We really appreciate you coming and hanging on throughout this whole hour and a half. I think a little over an hour and a half. And you all better apply.
Yes. I mean, now after you've been in here, we're going to be really upset if, okay, so I'm looking at, while I'm talking, I'm looking at a message. Okay, I'm actually going to take a screenshot of what you just sent me for Inlet Grove, because if you could just let me know, are you in a medical academy at Inlet Grove or no? Because I've wanted to go to the school to speak to everybody. Okay, you are. So if you could please send me your email in the chat, because if I can't get to Inlet Grove, then I want to make sure I can send everything to you so you can see the presentation, because I definitely talk about the difference in how you fill out the application if Inlet Grove won't schedule a presentation. Okay, so I'm going to just take a screenshot of this. Okay, beautiful.
Woo.
Great. See, these are important things to mention. Thank you for that information also. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll be able to schedule something with Inlet Grove, but
yeah. All right, and then as I'm sure you may already remember, for those of you that want a copy of the presentation, we have a recording that we did. If your high school isn't hosting one with us, you just want to make sure to email Leslie or myself, and we'll send you a copy of that recorded presentation that goes over the application in more depth.
Yep.
Okay. All righty.
So we're going to wish you good luck. We know you're going to apply. We may be seeing you again at a high school presentation. So you may be sick of us very soon, but that's okay. Hopefully we're going to be having a long-standing relationship with you guys, and anything that we can do to, make this a possibility for you and to make it happen so you're part of the class of 2021 Snow Scholars, we would love that. Nothing would make us happier.
And you're starting off on a good foot by coming tonight to do this Q&A session with us, and for hanging on. You didn't just come in for a little bit and leave. Like you all stuck with us. So
yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.